You have probably heard the schoolbook version of World War II. The Nazis were a fanatical group that rose out of chaos, built a military juggernaut through sheer willpower, and tried to conquer Europe. According to textbooks, Germany materialized tanks and aircraft from hatred and ideology, as if the nation simply clenched its teeth and forged a war machine from thin air. But what if the real engine behind that war wasn't in Berlin at all? Money and technology that made Hitler possible came from New York and corporate boardrooms across the Atlantic. It sounds like a conspiracy. Something too large and uncomfortable to fit into school curriculums. Yet behind the slogans and street rallies was a global financial network. A small group of American banks and corporations didn't simply trade with Nazi Germany. They built it. They pumped capital into its industries, armed its soldiers, and secured its logistics. And in the process, some earned more during the war than before it. You will see why your teachers avoided this chapter, and why many of the corporations who profited from genocide still shape your economy today. Rewind to understand how this happened. Rewind to 1933. Germany Hitler has seized power. The Treaty of Versailles demanded crushing reparations. The Treaty of Versailles demanded crushing reparations. Obliterated the 1920s hyperinflation obliterated savings. Unemployment hovered around a third of the workforce. Industrial output collapsed, and starvation loomed. It was toxic. The Reichsmark wasn't just weak, it was toxic paper. Hitler promised to revive national dignity, restore power, rebuild the military. But rhetoric does not forge artillery. To rearm a nation, you need oil, steel, chemicals, and cash mountains of it. And Germany had none. Where did it come from? Wall Street in the 1920s. Wall Street in the 1920s was bloated with capital. American bankers flush with post-war profits understood something the Allies didn't. Germany was not a dead economy, just a desperate one. The Dawes Plan of 1924 reorganized German reparations and, more importantly, tied Germany to American finance. J.P. Morgan, Dillon Read, and Chase National Bank orchestrated bond issuances, loans, and restructuring. Over $475 million in American capital flowed into Germany from 1924 to 1931, equivalent to billions today. It wasn't charity, it was control. It was not charity. American financiers sat on advisory boards, dictated policy, and effectively managed German economic recovery. When Hitler took control, he inherited this existing American-backed infrastructure. The banks didn't recoil from fascism. They leaned into it. They saw order, not ideology. They saw profit, not genocide. Take Standard Oil, owned by the Rockefellers. They formed deep partnerships with IG Farben, the German chemical conglomerate that later produced Zyklon B, the gas used in extermination chambers. This wasn't casual cooperation. It was technological fusion joint ventures, patents, production know-how. The most important element, synthetic fuel. Germany had land and coal, but lacked oil entirely. Without
lacked
petroleum,
oil
no
entirely.
air force could fly.
Without petroleum,
No tanks
no air
could blitz.
force could fly.
Standard Oil
No
supplied
tanks
the
could blitz.
hydrogenation technology
Standard
to
Oil
turn
supplied
coal
the
into
hydrogenation
gasoline.
technology
Without
to
it,
turn
the
coal
Wehrmacht
into
would have been
gasoline.
grounded in
Without
6
it,
months.
the Wehrmacht would have been
Rockefeller
grounded in
executives
6
knew
months.
precisely what they
Rockefeller
were enabling.
executives knew
They received
precisely
reports,
what they were
exchanged
enabling.
staff,
They
and
received
continued
reports,
transferring
exchanged
technology
staff,
after the invasion
and
of
continued
Poland.
transferring
Even
technology
after war was
after the
declared,
invasion of
the
Poland.
partnership
Even
endured.
after war was
If you
declared,
think that
the
was an
partnership
isolated
endured.
moral failure,
If you think
wait
that was
until
an
you meet
isolated
IBM.
moral failure,
Known today
wait
for
until you meet
computers and
IBM.
artificial
Known
intelligence,
today for
IBM
computers
once
and artificial
perfected
intelligence.
industrial murder.
IBM once
Their
perfected
punch-card machines
industrial murder.
catalogued Jews,
Their punch-card
tracked
machines
transport
catalogued
routes,
Jews,
assigned labor,
tracked
and
transport
recorded
routes,
deaths.
assigned labor,
Every
and
concentration
recorded
camp
deaths.
operated
Every
with
concentration
IBM
camp
systems machines
operated with
calibrated
IBM
to
systems
Nazi bureaucracy.
machines calibrated
IBM's
to Nazi
German
bureaucracy.
subsidiary DuPont
IBM's German
maintained
subsidiary,
equipment on site,
DuPont,
sent
maintained
technicians
equipment
into
on site,
camps,
sent
and
technicians
processed
into
the punch
camps,
cards that
and
decided
processed the
who
punch
lived
cards
and who
that
died.
decided who lived
IBM
and who
headquarters
died.
in New York
IBM
collected
headquarters in New
royalties
York
because the
collected
machines weren't
royalties
sold.
because
They were
the
leased.
machines were not
Every
sold.
card punched
They were
was
leased.
revenue.
Every card
IBM
punched
didn't pull
was
triggers.
revenue.
They built the
IBM did not
spreadsheet
pull
that made
triggers.
genocide
They
efficient.
built the spreadsheet that
Another
made
pillar,
genocide
Henry
efficient.
Ford.
Another
He
pillar,
wasn't just a business
Henry
icon,
Ford.
he was an
He was
ideological
not just
export.
a business icon.
Ford
He
published
was an
anti-Semitic
ideological
propaganda
export.
through the Dearborn
Ford
Independent,
published
promoting the
anti-Semitic
fabricated
propaganda
conspiracy
through the
text,
Dearborn
the
Independent,
Protocols of the Elders
promoting
of
the
Zion.
fabricated conspiracy
Hitler
text,
admired him so
the
deeply
Protocols
that
of the
Ford's
Elders of
portrait
Zion.
hung in the Führer S
Hitler admired
office.
him so deeply
And while
that
American
Ford's
factories
portrait hung in
pivoted
the Führer's
toward
office.
wartime production,
And while American
Ford's
factories
German
pivoted toward
subsidiary
wartime production,
expanded. Ford
Ford's
Work
German
manufactured
subsidiary
trucks,
expanded.
engines,
Ford
and
Work
machinery for
manufactured
German
trucks,
forces,
engines,
using forced
and
labor.
machinery for German
Even
forces,
after the United
using
States
forced
entered
labor.
the war,
Even
Ford's
after the
German
United
facilities
States
were
entered the war,
protected by the
Ford's
Nazi
German
government
facilities
as critical
were
military
protected
assets.
by the Nazi government
When Allied
as
bombs
critical
damaged
military
them,
assets.
Ford sought
When
compensation
Allied
from
bombs
the U.S.
damaged them,
taxpayer.
Ford sought
General
compensation
Motors
from
played
the
an
U.S.
even larger role through its
taxpayer.
subsidiary Opel.
General Motors
GM
played
produced
an even larger
roughly
role
half of all
through
German
its
trucks
subsidiary
and
Opel.
around a
GM
third of
produced
German
roughly
armored
half
vehicles
of all
by
German trucks
1939
and around a
Blitzkrieg.
third of
The
German
lightning
armored
invasion
vehicles
strategy
by
that crushed
1939.
Poland and France
Blitzkrieg.
rolled
The
on
lightning
GM
invasion
wheels.
strategy that crushed
Opel
Poland and
engineers
France
designed engines
rolled
for
on
Luftwaffe
GM wheels.
aircraft.
Opel
GM
engineers
executives
designed
claimed
engines
they had
for
no
Luftwaffe
authority
aircraft.
over foreign branches
GM
while
executives
continuing to
claimed
collect
they had
profits.
no authority over
After the
foreign
war,
branches.
they joined
While
Ford in
continuing to
demanding
collect
compensation
profits. After
for
the war,
damage to their
they
German
joined Ford
plants.
in demanding
And they
compensation
won. Financial
for damage to their German
institutions
plants.
were no
And they
less
won.
complicit.
Financial
Chase
institutions
National Bank
were no less
now,
complicit.
JPMORGAN, Chase
now Morgan.
operated under Nazi
Chase operated
occupation
under Nazi
in Paris.
occupation in Paris.
Jewish accounts
Jewish
were frozen.
accounts were frozen.
Assets seized.
Assets
Families
seized.
stripped of wealth.
Families
All the
stripped
while,
of
the
wealth.
bank sent
All the
reports
while,
back to New
the
York.
bank sent reports back
Executives
to New
knew
York.
and chose
Executives
profit
knew
over
and chose
morality.
profit
They
over
continued
morality.
operations
They
in
continued
occupied
operations
France until
in occupied
1944,
France until
long
1944.
after Americans were dying
Long
on
after
European
Americans
soil.
were dying
Then
on European
there was
soil.
Union Banking
Then there was
Corporation,
Union Banking
run by
Corporation,
Prescott Bush,
run by
father
Prescott
of future
Bush,
President
father
George
of
H.W.
future
Bush.
President George H.
They managed
Bush.
assets for German
They managed
industrialists
assets for
and
German
helped
industrialists
finance steel
and helped
operations
finance steel
essential
operations
to Nazi
essential
rearmament.
to Nazi
ITT
rearmament.
sold communication
It sold
systems to
communication
Germany,
systems to
negotiated patents,
negotiated
and continued
patents,
dealings
and
throughout the
continued
war.
dealings
DuPont
throughout the war.
provided chemical
DuPont
inputs
provided
essential
chemical
to arms
inputs
manufacturing.
essential to arms
These weren't
manufacturing.
renegade managers
These were not
acting in
renegade
shadows.
managers acting
They
in shadows.
were
They were boardroom
strategies
strategies,
rooted in cold calculation.
calculation.
Profit above patriotism.
above patriotism.
Capital above country.
Capital above
Dividends
country.
above human
Dividends
life.
above human
Once
life.
you examine the
Once you
material
examine the
footprint,
material
the
footprint,
complicity
the
becomes
complicity
undeniable.
becomes undeniable.
IG Farben
IG Farben
used more than
80,000
slave laborers at Auschwitz.
Alone.
Alone men and women worked to death, manufacturing synthetic rubber and fuel. Ford Work shipped tens of thousands of military trucks. Opel supplied nearly 30,000 more.
Without these vehicles, Germany could not have mobilized troops, invaded neighbors,
or transported Jews to camps with industrial speed.
The Holocaust
was not only ideological,
it was logistical. It required efficiency, machinery, databases, and infrastructure. American corporations provided all of them. And here is the final insult. Accountability never came. Executives were not dragged into courtrooms. Shareholders were not stripped of wartime profits. A handful of symbolic penalties briefly appeared, only to be quietly settled or overturned. Governments preferred economic stability over truth. Cold War politics made former Nazis and their industrial sponsors useful assets against communism. The same firms whose subsidiaries fueled genocide became pillars of the post-war economy. Technology giants, auto manufacturers, oil titans. Their logos are on your laptop, your credit card, your car. If you want to know why your teachers never told you any of this, it's because history is written by victors who protect their investors. The story of Nazi Germany is not only about fascism, it is about capitalism stripped of restraint. A country built a war machine not through mythical fanaticism, but through contracts, patents, and spreadsheets signed in glass towers thousands of miles away. The lesson isn't just that evil exists. It's that when profit has no conscience, evil becomes scalable, efficient, and extraordinarily lucrative. People ask whether there was any justice for the corporations that fueled the Nazi war machine. There were trials. Technically, there were trials. After the main Nuremberg proceedings, special trials targeted industrial leaders. Executives from IG Farben and Krupp were prosecuted, charged with slave labor, forced confiscations, and crimes against humanity. Some received prison sentences. And a few companies were broken up. In practice, and a few companies were broken up. In practice, their American business partners escaped scrutiny. Was not going to be driven by mom and pop factories. Germany's reconstruction wasn't going to be driven by mom and pop factories. Chemicals, the Marshall Plan required industrial capacity steel, and the emerging chemicals, logistics, automobiles, able to face and the emerging Cold War required a Western bloc able to face the Soviet Union to the U.S. government. Ford, General Motors, IBM, Standard Oil, and their German affiliates weren't criminals, they were assets. So the files were sealed. Records were classified. Testimony was buried under the logic of national security and economic stability. The United States entered a geopolitical chess match that demanded strong corporate partners, not corporate trials. Men who organized slave labor schemes were quietly absorbed back into industry. Former Nazis became CEOs, consultants, and defense contractors, and their American counterparts doubled down on their alliances, shifting attention from Europe to Latin America, the Middle East, and Asia. It would take half a century for the into
truth
daylight.
to claw its
In the
way
late
into
1990s,
daylight.
lawsuits brought by Holocaust survivors forced the opening of
brought
archives.
by Holocaust
Old
survivors
correspondence,
forced the
emerged
opening
letters,
of archives.
memos,
Old correspondence,
agreements
emerged letters,
showing that executives
memos,
not only
agreements
knew,
showing that
but calculated
executives
how
not
much
only
money
knew,
could be
but
made from war.
calculated how much
These were
money
not
could be
small
made
mistakes
from war.
or isolated bad
These
actors.
were not small
It was
mistakes
policy,
or isolated bad
investments,
actors.
dividends,
It was policy,
patent swaps,
investments,
revenue
dividends,
projections
patent
tied
swaps,
directly to
revenue
slave labor
projections
and
tied
military
directly
expansion.
to slave
In
labor
2000,
and military
the German
expansion.
government and major
In
corporations
2000,
created
the
a
German
$5 billion
government and major
compensation fund
corporations
for forced
created
labor
a
victims.
$5 billion
Sounds like
compensation
accountability
fund for
until
forced
you
labor
look at who paid
victims.
what.
Sounds
Ford
like
and GM
accountability
contributed
until you
around
look at
$20
who
million
paid what.
combined.
Ford and GM
That is loose
contributed
change
around
compared
$20
to
million
wartime profits
combined.
and post-war contracts.
That is loose change
IBM paid
compared
nothing
to
publicly.
wartime profits
The company
and post-war
denied
contracts.
knowing what its systems were
IBM
used for,
paid nothing
despite
publicly.
detailed
The
documentation
company
and
denied
internal
knowing what its
communications. They
systems were
settled
used
lawsuits
for,
privately.
despite detailed
Decades
documentation and
with no
internal
admission of
communications.
responsibility.
They
No
settled
apology,
lawsuits privately
just the economic
decades
equivalent
later
of
with no
make
admission
this
of responsibility,
And
no
here's the
apology,
sinister part.
just the
This
economic
was not
equivalent
an aberration
of
of the
make this
1930s.
disappear.
It is the
And
template.
here's the sinister
Powerful
part.
corporations
This wasn't an
decide that
aberration
doing
of the
business
1930s.
with oppressive governments
It's the template.
is too lucrative to pass up, while consumers, governments, and media look the other way. We pretend these decisions are about innovation and efficiency, not exploitation. Swap the uniforms, change the slogans, and the moral calculus stays identical. Look at the present. American multinationals manufacture in regions of China where Uyghur Muslims are held in mass detention, subjected to forced labor, surveillance, and cultural erasure. The U.S. State Department officially labels it genocide, and yet companies lobby against sanctions. They hire legal teams to blur supply chain definitions, to argue that verifying labor conditions across thousands of subcontractors is too complex. It is the same rhetorical trick as the 1930s. We do not control foreign subsidiaries. Today, the wording is supply chains are complicated. Same excuse. Same profits. Apple made more than $365 billion in revenue recently. A chunk of that production is built on Chinese factory networks that human rights organizations link to forced labor programs.
A chunk of that production is built on Chinese factory networks that human rights organizations link to forced labor programs.
But with policy memos
when lawmakers
and legal
propose regulations,
and if you think tech
Apple
is somehow
lobbies against
immune,
them.
remember Google's
Not with
Dragonfly
swastikas
project,
and speeches,
a
but
censored
with policy
search
memos and legal
for China,
filings.
designed
And if
to
you
hide
think tech
Tiananmen
is somehow
Square,
immune,
erase
remember
dissent,
Google's Dragonfly
bury
project,
human rights
a
topics.
censored search engine for
Employees
China
rebelled,
designed to
and the
hide
project was
Tiananmen
shelved.
Square,
But
erase
the message
dissent,
was clear.
bury human rights
Access
topics.
to a billion users
Employees
is
rebelled
worth
and the
compromising
project
truth.
was shelved.
Facebook's
But the message
algorithms
was clear.
helped fuel
Access to a
genocide
billion
in Myanmar.
users is worth
Militias
compromising
used
truth.
posts and messaging
Facebook's
to coordinate
algorithms helped
attacks
fuel
on the
genocide
Rohingya.
in Myanmar.
25,000
Militias
people
used
died.
posts and
The company
messaging to
apologized
coordinate
and
attacks
promised
on the
better
Rohingya.
moderation. Then
25,000
continued
people
operations
died.
because
The
shutting down
company
an entire
apologized
market
and promised
would hurt
better
revenue.
moderation,
Oil
then
giants
continued operations
partner
because
with
shutting
regimes
down
that
an
murder
entire
journalists
market would
and
hurt
bomb
revenue.
civilians.
Oil giants
Arms
partner with
manufacturers
regimes
sell
that
weapons to
murder
governments
journalists
that
and
use them
bomb
on their own
civilians.
populations.
Arms
Silicon
manufacturers
Valley
sell
firms
weapons to
build
governments that
surveillance
use them
systems
on their
for
own
authoritarian
populations.
states.
Silicon Valley firms build surveillance systems for authoritarian states, the digital handcuffs of the 21st century. Cisco helped engineer China's Great Firewall. Oracle sells database tools to track dissidents. They call it enterprise solutions.
Punch cards.
But to the person being watched, it's the modern equivalent of IBM punch cards. The details change, but the logic doesn't.
Wins every
Profit
time.
versus
Here's
principle,
the uncomfortable truth.
and profit wins
Corporations
every time.
do not
Here's
have
the uncomfortable
morals.
truth.
They have
Corporations don't
and
have
fiduciary
morals.
duties.
They have balance sheets and
do not
fiduciary
sit in
duties.
boardrooms
CEOs
debating
don't sit in
ethics.
boardrooms
They
debating
debate
ethics.
quarterly earnings.
They debate
A company
quarterly
will
earnings.
work with dictatorships,
A company will
genocidal
work with
regimes,
dictatorships,
human traffickers,
genocidal regimes,
or slave
human
camps,
traffickers,
if it is legal,
or slave
discreet,
camps, if it is legal,
and profitable.
discreet, and
Executives
profitable.
justify
Executives
it with familiar
justify
lines.
it with familiar
We are
lines.
creating jobs.
We're creating jobs.
We are staying
We're staying
competitive.
competitive. It's
It is
complicated.
complicated.
They
They
donate to museums,
sponsor charities,
endow
endow
university programs.
They build
They
hospitals,
hospitals
with one hand,
with one hand
and fund bomb
factories
or surveillance
systems
with the
the
other.
other.
As long as the
hospital
hospital ribbon cutting
is public
and the atrocities
stay hidden,
History
history remembers them
philanthropists.
as philanthropists.
So what are you supposed to do
what are
with
you
this
supposed to
knowledge?
do with this knowledge?
First, understand that
World War II was not just bullets and ideology.
It was an economic
It
project.
was an economic
American
project.
banks
American banks restructured German debt and underwrote its recovery.
American
industrial giants powered German tanks, engines, and fuel.
American technology
tracked human beings into death camps. Hitler did not rebuild Germany alone. He was subsidized.
Second, recognize that accountability rarely follows wrongdoing. Most of the executives involved died,
decorated,
wealthy,
respected.
The companies paid minuscule settlements
not
decades
because they
later,
repented,
because
lawsuits threatened stock prices.
Justice
stock
is a
prices.
footnote when
Justice is a footnote when profits are institutionalized.
Pay attention
Third,
to
pay
where
attention
your money
to
goes.
where your money goes.
That phone in your pocket
may
have passed through a factory line
staffed by coerced laborers.
Those shoes you wear
may be tied to a supply chain built on intimidation and detention.
The electric car you idolize
might rely on
cobalt
mined by children
or
assembled in
blanketed
regions
with
with state
You may
surveillance.
not intend to support any of this, but companies count on your silence more than your outrage. Fourth, do not fall for the narrative that this is conspiracy. It is not hidden. It is documented.
Isn't hidden.
Congressional
It's documented.
reports,
Congressional
declassified
reports,
declassified
cables,
depositions,
corporate archives,
lawsuits.
depositions,
It is
lawsuits.
public record.
It is
It is
public
simply
record.
inconvenient to the people who own the television networks,
to the people who
the
own
think
the
tanks,
television networks,
and the
think
politicians who
tanks,
decide
and the
what you are
politicians
taught.
who
If
decide
this makes
what
you
you are
angry,
taught.
Good. If it makes you realize your history
If it
classes
makes you realize
skipped the
your
part
history
where
classes
American
skipped the part
corporations
where
enabled
American
genocide,
corporations
even
enabled
better,
genocide,
because the
even
cycle
better,
does
because
not
the
end
cycle
in
doesn't end
1945.
in 1945. It reincarnates new countries, new markets, new excuses, same incentive structure.
Until people speak, until
history becomes too loud to sanitize. It will keep repeating.
And here is the most chilling conclusion. The families who profited from Hitler did not vanish. They merged, rebranded, IPO'd, diversified. Their corporate descendants dictate supply chains, regulate digital speech, influence elections, and lease your data like they once leased punch card machines to concentration camps. Different names,
Different
same
names,
bloodlines,
same bloodlines,
same playbook.
playbook.
We didn't
stop
stop
them.
We just stopped paying attention.